Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece. Episodes 377, 378, and 379. The pain of my crewmates is my pain. Zorro's desperate fight. A promise from a distant day, the pirate's song and a small whale, and Brooks' past, a sad farewell with his cheerful comrade. In these episodes, y'all, I did not like this one bit. Not even a little. I really... My current state of mind was not ideal for an animal abandonment-centric storyline. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to the One Piece crew for commissioning this episode. Everybody is here in the chat. Hi, y'all. Delighted to have you. Also, I hate you and get out. You guys, I'm not going to stunt on any of you. I know that a lot of the time when I get emotional about an episode, y'all want to know, right? I cried like a little baby. I sobbed and clung to Sam, who was sitting next to me through the last of these 3 episodes. And truly, I believe that we're gonna have a happy ending here. But oh my God, you guys. Look, here's the thing with me. Even animal death is less difficult for me. It's the suffering. That's the part that I can't fucking stomach. And the aspect of it where an animal is unable to quite understand why you have to do what you're doing. It's like, the fucking episode of Futurama where Fry's dog is waiting for him, which I think we can all agree is one of the most traumatic episodes of any television show ever aired. It's still brought up whenever anybody's like, what's the saddest show episode you've ever seen? That's usually the top of the list that people will post and get the most likes and retweets or comments or whatever. So, it's the combo of an animal that doesn't understand fully what's happening. I will say that at least Laboon has more comprehension. It's not the same, but it just brought that up for me. I have Sam, and he had to get fixed, and then he got the infection, and I had to wash his wound out and do things that hurt him in the short run to ensure that he didn't sustain harm in the long run. And it was so difficult for me to make myself do it, you guys. At one point when he was first, the infection had first set in, his leg was really swollen, and it was in his sort of underbelly as well. And so swollen that you touched it at all, and he yelped. And we had to figure out how to lift him into the car. And I tried to lift him, and he yelped, and I literally put him down and turned around and started to almost throw up because it just hurt my heart so bad. And Owen had to come around and pick him up. And I just keep thinking about, I'm going to have to give him away. And I know it's for the best. I'm sorry, you guys. I knew this was gonna happen. But I've really grown to love him. And if it weren't for what's going on with him and his brother and them not getting along, I would definitely want to keep him. Even though he's a nightmare in some ways. And I am going to have to give him away and leave him with somebody else and drive away. And I genuinely don't know how I'm going to do it. It was tough to say goodbye to the other puppies. And I didn't get to know them the same way. They were sweethearts, but there were so many of them that at that point they were all still outside. And I wasn't spending a ton of time with them. And Sam, we've trained him to be an inside and outside dog now. So he's with me constantly. And I know it will be what's best for him if I'm able to find somebody. But, it's going to rip my heart out, you guys. It is going to fucking kill me. And I think it's just also been at the forefront of my mind because I'm not sure what the fuck is going on. I think there's a combination of things happening. First of all, I think a lot of people got pets during the pandemic and they didn't fully understand what it was going to take for them to continue to care for this animal once they were no longer working from home all the time. So there has been a huge influx. Here he is. He knows I'm talking about him. A huge influx of dogs being surrendered because of the fact that their owners are either unwilling or unable to care for them anymore. I think that some people were under the impression they would get to work from home forever, and so their companies just screwed them. So all these shelters are overflowing. And on top of that, I've had several friends recently lose their dogs kind of suddenly. And a cat as well. Those of you who know Jamie from the show, her sweet cat passed away. And I had no less than 5 friends over the past month lose dogs. And they were not sick. It was a very sudden thing. So I think that I'm just sort of surrounded by a lot of sad stories with animals in addition to what I'm dealing with my own. And he's looking at me. Hey, baby. Who's a good puppy? Yes, you are. You're the best one. Don't tell Pippin I said that. You're the best puppy. He's so good, you guys. So anyway, this was brutal. It just really, really got to me. And I appreciate Brooke so much more because he is truly fucked up in a way that the other pirates don't really seem to be. His captain is sympathetic, and the other pirates definitely care about Laboon. It's not like they don't give a shit, but it's very clear to me that Brooke and Laboon have a particular relationship, and Brooke is a real softie in regard to, I don't know if it's animals in general, but definitely Laboon at least. So it's particularly difficult for him. And that is just also how I am. There is just something about the fact that they don't understand and that sometimes they have to go through suffering and just trust you, and that's what gets to me a lot about caring for Sam is that I have to do these things that hurt him. And I know they hurt him, but he, after I do this thing that hurts him, he will still climb into my lap and want cuddles and love me, even though I inflicted that on him and I feel like he should be mad and just be well, I'm not coming near you now, because he trusts me that much and understands somehow that I do just want to care for him. And you guys, I just was not ready. So I'm going to back up and we have to talk about Zorro first. But I just needed to talk about this right out of the gate because it is obviously, as you can hear, a soft spot for me at the moment. So yeah, well, let's talk about Zorro first because this is a weird thing. I'm not entirely sure that I get what happened here. So we start off, I should mention that we have a new theme song, and it's not actually new, it's just a new version of the last theme song. I'm not a musical expert, so I can't tell you what changes were made, but it sounds like it's faster paced or made a little bit more techno sounding. I'm not sure. But the beginning of this episode is like a really long slow-mo replay of the end of the last one, where we're reestablishing everything with Kuma having this, like, bomb, basically. And I was genuinely surprised because I was watching the screen when I said this last episode, that the bomb goes off and it looks like the island literally disappears off the map. Like, it seems like it's straight up gone. And we have, like, trees that go flying and buildings that crack, and it's like, I mean, it's serious. And then we come back and it's not remotely as bad as it looked. It's like this very impressive, long drawn out explosion. And then it's sort of like, well, the buildings closest to them are rubble, but most of the rest of the island seems to be like completely fine, honestly. So I was a little disappointed. I'm going to be straight with y'all. This seemed like a cop-out. I was hoping that we would at least be like in the floating rubble of the ship / island, and we were going to have to figure things out from there. I didn't expect for almost everything to be like completely intact before, like, after this explosion that was made so much of. And Kuma is like just looking around, surveying everything, and we get shots of all of these people who are laid out in such a way that they look like they're dead. They're not. This massive explosion that he says is going to kill everybody because those are his orders doesn't even kill one single solitary person, as far as I can see. I mean, like, I'm nobody. I don't feel like there's any casualties, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think anybody dies, which that's pretty lame. I'm fine with our main characters not dying at this point. I'm even fine with some of our main side characters not dying. I would like some red shirts mixed in, though. I wouldn't mind, like, there being any indication that his power is something to truly fear, because at this point, it just feels like a lot of nothing. It feels like I'm gonna intimidate everybody and make all of these big promises, but in the end, it's like I'm just popping a large balloon in your face. It's annoying, but it doesn't actually have an effect. So, yeah, I was just, like, bewildered. This long pan over everybody who is, like, evidently at this moment dead, and their eyes are whited out, which is often, like, either they're dead or they're just unconscious. It's really kind of up to the viewer how to interpret it sometimes. This affected me at first because I thought they were really gone. It seemed like the way that it's done is the whited out eyes are people who are dead. And then you go to the One Piece crews and all of the Straw Hats' eyes are closed. So that was how I was taking it, was like everybody else is dead, but the One Piece crew, or you guys are the One Piece crew, my bad. The Straw Hat crew are just knocked out, but not dead. So Akuma goes over to Luffy and is like staring down at his body and like figuring out how to take him out of here. He lifts him up by his front of his like vest, which I don't know why that was such a weird choice to me. But as he's lifting him up, who should show up but Zorro, who puts a big old slash in Kuma's shoulder. And this is unexpected. It turns out, first of all, Kuma has to be like ready for an attack, it turns out, in order to deflect it. So it's not like it's an automatic thing that happens. When Zorro gets the drop on him, it cuts him pretty good. But the problem is, he's a robot. Cyborg, whatever. It's wild, you guys. The shoulder that's showing has like a dial on it, and a bunch of cords that are coming out. And I was sort of thinking that maybe it was just his arm or something. I don't know. But then his one eye begins to blink red in a very Terminator-esque sort of way. And he opens his mouth and there's this like beam of light that gathers in his mouth. It's very dramatic and actually, I thought, pretty cool looking. And he's sucking the light in and Zorro's watching him and just sort of like standing there prepping before he shoots it at Zorro, and he causes like a pretty good sized blast. It doesn't hit. Zorro is able to dodge it, but like, that's freaky, and there's all this like smoke pouring out of his mouth when he closes his mouth. The look of it is, it's intimidating. I'll say that. But, I'm just going to read a comment here. Gus says, I think it was intended to knock them all out so that he could take Luffy and spare their lives like he said he would. I mean, he said that he would spare their lives if they handed Luffy over, and if not, he was under orders to kill them all, and he wouldn't use the thing, and he said then this was your choice, as he supposedly lets the bomb go off to kill everybody because they didn't hand Luffy over the way that they said. So I don't know if it's supposed to be that he like actually has a soft spot and didn't kill them all because he just felt like it was the wrong thing to do. But it's a weird thing to like threaten them all as if they're going to kill them with a certain weapon, and then that weapon doesn't come close to killing them all. I just feel like it's, you know what I'm saying? It's just a weird, that's not clear to me that he was intending to just knock them out from the beginning, because that's not what he said. The whole thing was predicated on them handing Luffy over voluntarily, which they didn't do. So I'm calling bullshit. It just seems like we wanted this big dramatic moment, but we didn't want to actually like pay anything for it. So again, Zorro gets like thrown off and Kuma is able to heal almost instantly the like wound in his shoulder, which I thought was sort of interesting. It's not just his flesh that heals either. It's like the clothing as well. And when Zorro looks over, I think it's like one of his swords that's in the ground. No, it's a steel bar. It's melted. That's how hot this beam was that he shot out. So it sort of like folds over. And Zorro is in pretty bad shape here. It's pretty rough. So he says that I know I'm not worth as much as Luffy. My bounty is not as high. But I could really make y'all's lives pretty miserable. And I think that you should take me seriously and consider that my head would be a decent enough replacement for Luffy. Like, I can't give him up. I just can't. Like, that's not honorable. But if you were going to have some honor yourself, you could at least like fight me for it. So there's also a moment where he says something that he is a pacifista, a creation that is an in-development human weapon project. So, like a Terminator is sort of what I'm thinking of. And he has a sense of honor himself. When Zorro is like telling him, I can't do this, like it's against my code, he seems to understand what he means and sort of respect that. We also hear that this is like a creation again from Dr. Vegapunk, who we've definitely heard of before. I don't remember what he's done, but this is a familiar name. It's a good name, I won't lie. And Zorro, for his part, is just like, you know, I'm not gonna lie, it feels pretty unfair that you've got like these serious upgrades in your body, but you've also got devil fruit powers. Like, that's just a deeply unfair advantage. He's not wrong. So he says, he offers himself, and Kuma is like not completely averse to this. He looks like he is considering it, and while Zorro is waiting for him to come to a decision on it, who should show up but Sanji, who has decided that he also is going to martyr himself. And it's interesting to me the way that Zorro reacts, because so Sanji, when he turns up, one of his pant legs is missing. One of his jacket sleeves is missing. And there looks to be almost like a hole bitten out of his tie. And he tells Zorro not to show him up. And puts himself between Zorro and Kuma. And he's like, all right, if you're going to take a head, take mine. Now, I said that Zorro was in pretty bad shape. And he is. But demonstrably, Sanji is in worse shape than Zorro. He's walking all weird, like he's drunk. You know, there's a real sort of weaving quality. When he's standing in front of Kuma, he's like trembling violently, and it doesn't seem like it's fear. It seems like just trying to hold himself upright is this like intense effort. And Zorro, for his part, I sort of wondered if he was going to be like, well, then let's do this together, bro. And I should have known that, of course, he wasn't going to be like that. I just thought in these extenuating circumstances that maybe they would have learned to work together for like a second. But no, apparently not. Sanji makes this whole, like, you know, dramatic, just tell the others that I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to say goodbye kind of moment. And then he gets kicked aside by Zorro, who just puts him down so hard, is just like, you idiot. And he gets knocked out completely this time. He is really just down for the count. When Zorro, like, grabs him, Sanji clings for a moment as if he's going to try and prove that he can still stay upright. But that was all it took, and he, like, finally slides down and hits the floor. And it's very clear he was not going to be up for shit. So this is when Kuma is like, all right, well, if you want me to, he says, I won't take Straw Hat's head, but if you're intent on taking his place, you are going to experience a living hell. And this is a weird moment. He puts his hand with his little paw against Luffy's chest and pushes out a giant red bubble behind Luffy that he explains is his pain and exhaustion that Luffy has experienced, that has essentially been separated from Luffy. So when we see Luffy later, he feels totally fine. Like, he's in great shape because this has removed all of the pain and suffering from him. And that feels like something that you don't want to do with a guy who's like the main target of the world government is like bring him back to prime fighting shape. I was just like, why would you do this? It's just such a stupid move. I don't know. I guess Kuma's meant to be dumb. I don't know. So he tells Zorro that you have to inflict this pain and agony on yourself, and as close to death as you are, it's not only going to kill you, it's going to be slow and painful. And he pushes it toward him, this like bubble, which I thought was going to completely encircle Zorro. Like, it's so big at first. I thought that he was going to go inside it and it would be a sort of prison. Instead, it turns into around the size of maybe like a tennis ball and floats toward his chest and like goes into his chest from there. And then he begins to completely rack with pain, and he falls to the ground, and Kuma is standing over him and saying, "Are you still sure you want to do this?" So Zorro says, "Just let me pick the location." And we go over to this spot that's by the woods, and the big bubble is there again. And I wasn't entirely sure about what was happening here. Like, I think what it's supposed to be is that the initial contact with it incapacitated him so badly that Kuma took it out from his chest and then put it like somewhere else for him. Or maybe that it was just a very small ball because it was only a fraction of it. And this was like the full-sized one. But yeah, so he puts this like at some corner of the island, and Kuma, the next thing that we see is him like looking out on the ocean and saying, "This kid has inspired such loyalty that he couldn't be anybody's son but yours, could he, dragon?" So evidently, I am led to understand that Kuma, who is supposed to be very intimidating, shows up to this island with the orders to kill literally everybody there. And not only does he not kill anybody, he also restores Luffy to prime fighting shape before he goes. This guy is an op, right? Like, this is not a man who is loyal to the government. This isn't if I'm not believing that, then I have to believe it's extreme and utter incompetence. And I just don't get the vibe from him that that's what it is. I really do think that he has to be sort of rooting for Luffy because of this comment that he says about Dragon as well. I'm like, all right, so either he's only commenting on the fact that he has met other associates of Dragon's who are also super loyal, so this is like the kind of attitude that he has seen before, or he's making a more personal comment and kind of being like, I get how they feel because I am also super loyal to you. And I don't know if that's reaching, but it felt like, it didn't feel like it was just a comment on, I've seen this before. It felt personal to me. And the fact that he apparently like had some honor, at least according to Zorro, with the fact that he was willing to take Zorro's, not his offer because he doesn't like take his head or anything, but you know, he respected the fact that Zorro absolutely would not be handing Luffy over and seemed to appreciate that. So all I can say is that either Kuma is somebody who is like low-key on our side, or he is so bad at his job that he is not threatening at all. And I just can't take him seriously. It's just, that's the problem with a show where nobody can die, but like the bad guy can do things that you're supposed to believe could kill people. That's the nice thing about the way that Moria was set up, is that his ability was about taking people's shadows, which doesn't inherently kill them and actually only really works if they aren't dead, because then he loses the shadow entirely. So you've built in a really nice, way for this to work within the confines of the universe that you want to build, where nobody's ever really in danger of death. And yet he's still very scary. He's kind of taking away people's free will and making these bizarre copies and relegating them to a life in the that's freaky, and none of that involves killing them. But Kuma's power, the only thing that's particularly intimidating to me is the way that he can redirect attacks. And otherwise, I don't see it for him. So let's see. Gus says, I'm not sure either, just headcanon. I think he just pulls his torn jacket up, no healing. Oh, okay. It looked like it just fixed itself, but he pushes a tiny piece of the big bubble to Zorro. Okay, gotcha. And Florian says, well, I guess we have to wait and see what the deal is with Kuma. Twirls mustache. Enjoy your thoughts. So yeah, he leaves the island, and we then slow pan to the rest of the crew here, who are all waking up, and it's everybody on the island that seems fine. Luffy himself is dancing in place and talking about how amazing he feels. It's so weird because he's got bandages on him. And he didn't have, if he's feeling okay, I don't remember these bandages being on him from earlier, but maybe they were and I just didn't notice. But anyway, Sanji wakes up here, and he's the only one who had been conscious before other than Zorro, and he's like, where the fuck did Zorro go? And I'm pretty sure in his mind it was going to be Zorro's dead. And I'm not going to find him anywhere. But instead, he finds an incredibly fucked up Zorro off to the side, by the tree line. And Zorro's kneeling, I think, in place. No, he's standing. But he is in this big bloody patch of stone. And absolutely dripping with blood. I mean, it's everywhere. His shirt has been totally shredded. It's pretty bad. And Sanji says, what the hell happened here? To which Zorro says, what happened here? Nothing at all. And I'm going to give some credit here to the voice actor, because the way he delivers that line is so convincing that he's in horrible pain and is just doing his best to bear it for the moment. There's no real sense to me of I'm attempting to pretend I'm not in pain. It's more I'm trying to hold it together and not completely lose my shit in front of you. And yeah, I'll let you know that I'm in pain, because look at all this blood. There's no point pretending this doesn't hurt. But I'm very, very close to falling apart a little bit, and I'm trying not to let that happen. So yeah, the voice actor is just very effective with that line delivery. So then we go to episode 378, A Promise from a Distant Day. And we start off on a tiny little thriller bark boat. It's so cute, guys. It's got this little, bat on the front of it. I don't think that... I'm assuming because of the stitching that Hilden had been also a zombie. So I think that he's gone forever now. And I would just like to register my profound sadness on that front, because I just enjoyed him a lot. And, like there was something bizarrely wholesome about him, even considering that he worked for like the baddest of the bad guys. So it's Absalom and Hogback, and I think there's one other person with them. I can't remember who the other one is. Oh, well, Moria, obviously, who's like laid out on the deck. So they're talking about a new warlord, and Hogback says he's a controversial figure. His name's Teach. From what I hear, he's a nasty piece of work. And he tosses over a newspaper. On the back of the newspaper, I just want to mention that there's a picture of Iceberg, and it just says the secretary wanted, but nothing further. And I'm very curious what that article's about. Absalom's reading this, and he says, 2nd Division Commander of the Whitebeard Pirates, Fire Fist Ace. Now awaiting execution at the prison, Ace is easily the most famous henchman Whitebeard has got working under him. A fine gift for Teach to present to the world government. And Hogback says, I feel like this could spell very bad news to our great pirate era. The tides are turning toward a maelstrom. There couldn't be a worse time for Moria to be flat on his back. And Absalom says, I see where you're going with this. And I was like, am I following it too? I don't think so. I am assuming that what he's saying is basically we should go after Ace. And we see, like, Teach is on the rise. But maybe if we captured this dude or did something with him, that he would be, we could like supplant him. But I'm not feeling like I totally get it. Because, like, Moria was basically sanctioned by the government, right? Being one of the warlords, right? So are they saying that they're going to try and, like, step in to his place? Gus says, Absalom survives. Sad. Oh, Florian says that's why this is called in the fandom the arc where nothing happened. Because nobody, like, dies or anything. Okay, I can understand, like, in the end, why they feel that. I really do. I enjoyed this so much, but, like, in the end, with it just being like, oh, Moria just couldn't handle the shadows and kind of just crumpled, in the end. And then you're like, oh, well, he crumpled so that we could make room for this other big bad Kuma. And then Kuma doesn't do anything either. I gotta say, I understand people's frustration. I enjoyed so much of this. You all know that. But in terms of ultimate payoff, yeah, very weak sauce. Gus says Teach is Blackbeard, by the way. Oh, that's right. I remember hearing that now. So I'm not entirely clear what it is that Hogback is suggesting that Absalom is picking up on. I'm assuming that it's something to do with Ace, but because Ace is, like, already in prison and awaiting execution, I'm, like, not sure what they're planning to do. If it weren't for the fact that he had been got, then I'd be like, oh, they want to capture him for his bounty or something. But it's too late for that. So, I don't know. And maybe I'm not supposed to. And this is when Absalom says, I understand what you're getting at, but the only thing I really care about is having a nice wife. I want a living woman full of blood and passion. Because he says, sure, go pick out a corpse that's your type. Ugh, so creepy. So we go back to Big Thriller Bark, and our friends are loading up the Sunny. Luffy is trying to make do with just a chunk, like giant body-sized chunks of cheese. But he wants meat and is getting pretty frustrated over the fact that they don't have any. And Sanji is like, well, you could help me out a little bit here because none of the dudes who have gotten their shadows restored, none of them want to help because they don't want to leave the sunshine. And I was like, yeah, I gotta say, if I had been them, I also wouldn't want to leave the sunshine. Like, it's been how long? Yeah, no, I would be camping out for sure. And Sanji says, we got all the food back that was stolen from us, and it looks like somebody stocked us up with Moria's food. I'm assuming, once again, that this was Kuma. I have to, like, it's gotta be, right? Who else would do this? Because he's talking to Lola when he says this, and she's like, I wonder who would have done that. And I would have thought it was her and her people. So if not them, I'm gonna go with Kuma. And then we get a really nice moment, you guys. She says, as if food weren't enough, they left you all this too. You don't even have to hunt for treasure. It just delivers itself. And Nami says, I'm in heaven. And she's like laid out on a huge pile of loose gold and trinkets and boxes and weapons. Everything is sparkling around her. She has the kind of like happy expression that you don't see that often on her face, like a little smile and giant eyes of just like pure bliss. And Luffy picks something out, and Usopp is clearly worried she's going to be like, put my shit down. But instead, she's like, oh yeah, that's just costume jewelry. Of course he can have that. You guys, I know that like so much of the time, the point of a storyline where people get a bunch of money is that then you have to take it from them somehow, right? And I can't bear to watch them lose this treasure. I'm just going to say this right now. Can we sidestep that like plot requirement for just a little while? And only enjoyed this treasure. Next treasure they come across, fine. Take it, make it a big thing. But can we just like have this one and really just get to enjoy it for what it is? Pretty please? That's all I'm saying. Peronis stocked all the food and treasure on the Sunny before Kuma erased her. I forgot that she was like taking other stuff out of the kitchen as well. Because because I was thinking that she was the one who took stuff off the Sunny. I was misremembering, forgetting that they took everything off the Sunny when they were trying to feed Oars. And then when she's about to flee, she's going to take the Sunny and like reloads it again. Right. Thank you. Gus says nothing happened is a reference to Zorro's ordeal, where nothing at all happened here, not due to the fact that nobody dies. At this point, that's normal for this show. I mean, I would say still, like, there's been arcs that end, and it still feels like, despite there not being any, like, deaths, there's been forward movement on things. I guess the only thing that's, for me, pretty major that's changed for them is that they have Brook now, who previously they met him and invited him to be part of their crew, but he couldn't go out in the sun, so that was super impossible. And now they've got him with his shadow, so he could potentially become a crew member, which I really hope he's like a permanent addition. But I don't know, maybe he's just going to sail off into the sunset with Laboon. I don't know. I believe you, but I also feel a little bit like, I don't know, but it does kind of feel in a way in the end that the payoff was not, the payoff on so many other things has felt pretty significant and this one doesn't. But anyway, so they're loading everything up, and I love just this bit here, Nami is like vaguely aware that Lola called her Namizo, and Lola herself is sort of like, I don't get why I even said that. I have never met you, but I feel like I know you. And Nami realizes who she is and like runs up and hugs her and is saying, oh my God, I'm so glad to meet you again. And this really made me so happy, you guys. I wish that they could like stay friends. Like, you know, they're each going to go their separate ways. So I'm assuming we won't see her for a while. And probably if we do, it'll be in like a filler episode. But I just was glad that the little friendship that they began between the two of them got some closure, you know? I liked this a lot. And she hands over a bunch of treasure and is like, please take this. And everybody is so shocked at the fact that she's like giving something away. It's just like super, super out of character. So then we jump over to the crew carrying all kinds of stuff over to the guys who are out in the sun. And Zorro is still asleep, and he winds up like still being asleep when they get him on the boat. He's literally passed out. I think it's Nami who says something like, yeah, I've seen him sleep through a typhoon. So he's not going to be in fighting shape anytime soon. He really took one for the team in the most literal sense. So we then have a conversation between Sanji and two of the guys who were just conscious enough to see what happened with Zorro. And they had been going to tell Luffy about it. But Sanji is extremely serious about how it would fuck Luffy up to hear what Zorro did for him. It would just, you know, and I think that he's right. So he tells them not to say anything to Luffy. He makes them promise. And there's a pretty funny moment where there are, you know, like characters around their heads and they're holding their arms up. And I appreciated that Funimation does translate it as saying, wanna talk, wanna talk, wanna talk, wanna talk. So they have to keep the secret, but Robin, in one of the very creepy moments of her powers, yet again, is she's pushing her ear out of some guy's back so she can listen to the whole conversation. I really, really hated it. I love that this is like a possibility and all of this is well and good, but truly every time I get reminded of some of the ways she can use her power, it just grosses me out. It's like body horror, you know? So he convinces these guys that they won't talk. Robin knows. I don't know if she'll ever spill the beans or not. But then we go over to the party scene, requisite party scene. And Brooke is making lots of jokes about not having taste buds and whatnot. I love that the rest of the crew, even though Frankie's annoyed, everybody else is thinking it's hilarious. He says something about how he thinks he's gained some weight. And he also, like, we see him playing the fiddle in his flashbacks, but evidently he also plays the piano. He's just like a real musician of many types. And it's a cute moment because when he starts to play, Robin recognizes the song and she says something about how nostalgic it is to hear again. And I just thought that was a nice, I don't know, because we get so little from Robin that gives her personality for me. Anytime that I get reminded that she has feelings, to be honest, that is like fascinating. And I wish we had a little bit more of it. Just, I understand her history and it's awful. Like you guys remember when I found out about it, how really terrible it felt. But in the present, she still feels like a stranger. So this party with all of them sort of winds up dissolving into the memories of what happened with Laboon, because Luffy comes over and tells Brook that we did meet Laboon. We know where he is. He's still waiting for you. He remembers the promise that you made. And it's sort of funny because like, and this is just the way that the show will often work. But I really thought that we had sort of established that they had met Laboon and knew where he was. But it seems as if Brook just didn't really believe them or understand. Like, I don't know. It's like he's hearing this for the first time. And he just starts sobbing, crying. And again, voice actor who does his voice, the sobbing is so hysterical. It's very, very good. And then we get to see exactly what it was like with meeting him and what the crew was like and how much they like cared about each other. And I actually really liked this storyline. So we go, the first scene of Brook with his crewmates is him waking them all up with a song. Have you guys ever had somebody do this to you? Just a quick question, because my father could play the trumpet. It was like pretty rudimentary, but he could definitely play, and he more than once came into my room when he felt I had slept long enough and played it in my room, a fucking trumpet in a room like the size of this office. I cannot emphasize enough, you guys, how angry it made me. I would wake up in a towering rage with nowhere to direct it because my dad thought it was hilarious. You like, forget it. Absolutely. Even just thinking about it now, one of my favorite things that we have managed with technology is that I now have an Apple Watch which vibrates as an alarm to wake me up. And it's very effective. It wakes me up. And I don't have to have any annoying sound to force me awake, which is, in my opinion, no matter how gentle a sound it is, the worst way to wake up. It's so just, it doesn't matter how nice the sound is or if it's a song you love. I guarantee you within 6 days of you using that song for your alarm, you will not like that song anymore. It's just how it works, you know? So anyway, him doing this, I was sort of like, I absolutely cannot with you right now, Brooke. I'm a fan of you. I really like you. But the fact that you're doing this to your people, I can't approve of it. I just can't do it. They're all real pissed at him. So finally, we go up to the deck and the captain's up there brushing his teeth. His name is Calico, and he's got like tattoos around his eye and mouth. He's awesome looking, and I'm super bummed that he's dead because what a great name, what a great character design. And he just seemed cool, you know, like good-hearted dude. He's the one who comes up with the idea of eventually turning around and coming back for Laboon. I just really like him, and it makes me so sad to know that he's gone. And he's playing the music on the deck, Brooke is, for the captain. And this is when a whale, a little baby whale, shows up and starts making sounds. And it's like the music drew him, which makes sense because whale sounds, there is a sort of almost string instrument kind of quality to them. And I love when he shows up and everybody's just like, oh my God, he's so cute. And the way that Brooke speaks to Laboon it just reminded me so much of the way that Owen speaks to the dogs, especially to Sam, though. Like, he calls him buddy and is like, oh, good boy. And it's just everything about the interactions that they have. It felt for me like very familiar. And I think that's part of why it started to get me so emotional. There's a moment when they're like in the midst of a fight with another ship and a couple guys get thrown overboard. At this point, Brooke already has eaten the devil fruit, so he can't swim to go help his friends. And he turns and looks and he's like planning to send them a raft. And Laboon came up from underneath them and like lifts them up and saves them because he's a precious, sweet little baby who can do no wrong ever. So we then get a sort of like montage of what they go through as they're like, you know, making their way through the high seas with Laboon by their side, and how Brooke is bonding with him. And it's just, all of this is so cute. He's so adorable. The illustrations in this show of animals, they can really make things heartbreakingly adorable. And eventually we have a moment where they are going to be going over to the Grand Line and they're telling him that he can't follow. And you guys, this was the part later on, they have to say goodbye again. But at this point, it looks like it's going to be their main goodbye. And Brooke, they have to hide so that Laboon can't see them and call to them. So they like sit down behind the like rails of the ship. This was really hard. This is the part that kind of like got to me, is having to get an animal to understand by removing yourself so that they can't like keep appealing to your emotions, even though they still are, but they can't see it happening. And I had to do this with the puppies a lot, especially when we were down to just like 2 or 3, and I would bring Pippin inside and they would like come to the window and cry because they weren't also inside. And now I like switch Pippin and Sam out, and they have to be separated. So there's always one of them in the yard. And sometimes one of them will like be at the window and I have to sort of stand out of sight and wait for them to stop crying and like go play. Because once they like get accustomed to the idea that I'm not right here, it's okay. And they go play and they, you know, have a good time. But when they are still preoccupied with maybe getting me to let them inside, they will stand there and like make sounds. You guys, they're half husky, and I don't know how many of you are familiar, but huskies are an animal that makes sounds beyond belief, frankly. And they have inherited some of that. So they will howl in this way that just wrecks me. And I have had to do this little trick myself. So they get to the other side. They meet Crocus. And this is when he's like, so what about this whale? Is this a pet of yours? And everybody's like, what? And Brooke is so excited. He has been so bummed out. Like, since they first said goodbye to Laboon, they run into Crocus and they're like gonna get supplies and they're gonna have a celebration and everybody's cheering, and Brooke is off in the back, the only one who isn't cheering because his heart is shattered from saying goodbye to Laboon. And I just fucking felt him on that so hard. So when it turns out that Laboon crossed and is here with them, he is overjoyed, but is also like, dude, truly though, you can't come with us past this point. And it seems like Laboon really gets it this time. And then that's when Calico comes up and is like, how about this? you chill here for like 2, maybe 3 years max. And we will come back for you, because I don't think it's going to take that long. But you'll be bigger by then and, more able to handle things. We'll be done with what we're trying to do. And Laboon agrees, and they sail away. And Brook, for his part, as much as it's like painful to say goodbye to Laboon, this promise of eventually being able to see him again is enough to like take the edge off of the sadness, which is, it really like is so understandable to me how obsessed Brook is with getting back to Laboon after all of this. I would be the exact same way. I mean, I can't, this is the sort of thing that, I understand that there are times where people do have to surrender their pets, and it's like totally valid. Especially, I have a friend right now who is disabled, and something has happened, and she has 3 little dogs, and she is having to surrender all of them. She found a home for 1, but there are 2 more, and it's basically she went from 3 dogs to no dogs within like 4 days, and it's killing her to have to do it. But she literally is like so ill that she can't move a lot of the time, and they aren't getting cared for. So it's not like always surrendering your dogs or animals in general is a bad thing. But there's a difference between surrendering with the like conscientious sensation of responsibility and people who just ditch their animals and bail, which truly, the number of people that do that, it's astounding to me. And I know that I could have probably tried to surrender some of the puppies. Every place seemed to be pretty full, but I probably could have somewhere, and they would have taken them. And I just couldn't bear to do it. If I'm leaving them with a family and a home, fine, that's good for them. But just leaving them somewhere and not knowing what's going to happen to them and if they're going to find a place, I couldn't do it. I would just feel so much responsibility, and I would probably like obsessively check in and be like, hey, how is Sam doing? Even after. And so this feeling that Brook has of responsibility to Laboon, I was like, totally get it. Agree with you wholeheartedly. And I think that's like evidence that you're a good person, honestly. So yeah, that's the end of the episode, is them sailing away from Laboon and Crocus, who is hanging out with Laboon. And we get like a brief thing 3 years later, and it says the Florian Triangle. And it's just this like desolate moment of only Brook aboard the ship and the fog, and then that's the end of the episode. So yeah, fucking devastating, guys. Truly mean-spirited of you all, and I'm hurt by it, and I wasn't ready for it. I just wasn't ready for it. So anyway, that is it. I'm going to have to wrap this one up, but I appreciate you all a lot. The next episode on Tuesday is going to be a wannabe. I can't remember who it's with. I think it's with, nope. I thought I knew, but I'm excited about it. Anytime that there's a wannabe, it's fun. So I hope that you guys will join me for that, and appreciate all of you listening. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.